Hello, everybody. Andrew here from the Legend of Zelda Hub. It has been a while. We have been on a break from our podcast, and I am really happy to say that we are now back. This is our first episode in several months, and I know I've had a lot of calls, emails, and Facebook messages wondering when we were going to come back with one of these. And boy, do we have a big one today for you. There isn't much in the Legend of Zelda news front, but that's okay because we've got something better than news. We've got a special guest for you. Today, we're bringing in another one of the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild voice actors. Today, we have Elizabeth Maxwell. Elizabeth Maxwell, say hello.
Hey, everybody.
For those of you who may not be familiar with who Elizabeth is, you're definitely familiar with her character. Tell us which character you are in Breath of the Wild.
Well, believe it or not, I actually voice two. The main one is the Gerudo champion of Hyrule, Ms. Urbosa herself. But little known fact, I also voice her, I guess you could say her progeny, her descendant, Riju as well.
Now, see, even I did not know that. So I learned something just now. I knew you were about Urbosa, or some people pronounce it Urbosa. Why?
I'm not sure. I believe Nintendo pronounces it Urbosa. So
they do. Yeah, I did not know you did Riju. Riju, a very fun character. As you hit the nail on the button. She is the descendant of the champion, and you know, a little background on you. What got you to the path of working with Nintendo and working with this video game?
Oh goodness. Well, that is it's a long and winding path. I'll give you the condensed version. I've wanted to be an actor my entire life since I was 5 years old, and I started pursuing on-camera work in LA when I graduated from college with a BFA in theater. So I was already planning for that. And about 5 years into living in LA, I ended up moving out to Austin, Texas, which does have a film industry, but obviously it doesn't quite compare to LA. LA is kind of the mecca of the film and TV world. And I knew that I needed to be a little bit more creative and think outside the bubble in terms of how I was going to, continue working in the industry and making money. And, I've been a geek my entire life. I grew up playing video games. I grew up watching anime. And I had a number of good friends when I kind of, would spitball this stuff with them. A number of them said, you have a good voice. You have a background in these genres and you have training. Like, why have you never thought of voice acting? And I don't know why, but I hadn't. And kind of getting those suggestions a couple times kind of just cracked open a part of my brain that was like, well, duh, I should have been doing this years ago. So I started pursuing that, started getting work in online gaming and anime dubbing. And fast forward a couple years, it's kind of interesting because not a lot of people know this, but the casting process for video games is very, very secretive. A lot of times they won't use they'll do what's called whitewashing or sterilizing the script. So they take out any identifying words or details or plot lines, and they'll just kind of insert fake names and so forth. So I had this audition come across my email inbox for a video game. And it was kind of unusual in the sense that usually you can record your first audition for a game at your home studio. And then sometimes if you get a call back, they will want you to come out in person. But for this one, they specifically wanted us to come to LA for the very first audition. And and this was just like a day or two before the audition when I got this email. So it was pretty expensive. I was looking at a pretty large expense for me to go out to LA on that short of notice from Austin. But I don't know, maybe it was Urbosa's spirit reaching out to me, but I had this intuition that this project was special and that I needed to go the extra mile to be there for this audition. And lo and behold, I booked the job and it was freaking Zelda.
And you get to this moment, you're at this audition and you're finding out, okay, this is the Legend of Zelda, which, has been close to the top of the video game spectrum since I'm 37. Since I was a little kid, I played my first Zelda game when I was 5, 6 years old, the original. And up to this point in time, when, voice acting ain't really been a thing in the series. There'd been Hyrule Warriors, and there was a narrator, and in some other games, Link would say, simple things like, hey, come on, or you would have Navi say, hey, listen, but nothing really, there was no narrative as far as speech. It always been very bare bones type stuff, even if there was anything at all. So this was a huge step in a different direction for Nintendo to take this series. And with yourself and the other voice actors that were involved with this had to be a huge deal for you guys.
Yeah, well, and believe it or not, Andrew, we did not find out that the game was Zelda even when I went to the audition. I went through the initial audition, the callback, and booking the role, still not knowing what the game was or what the real name of the character was.
Wow.
It wasn't until I showed up for the first day of recording that I was actually told.
I could just imagine that be a jaw-dropping moment.
Yeah, I almost wonder. I'm. This is just me having fun and guessing. I never was told that this was actually true, but sometimes I wonder if like Nintendo knew how much the voice actors would probably freak out, and so they kind of did that on purpose. Like they didn't give us very long to like absorb the news, so we couldn't have like a panic attack and psych ourselves out before we came to our first session.
That is something, that is very Nintendo like. They are very, very protective, very secretive over, things that haven't been revealed yet. There's been times that I've seen over the years we've not known about a game like at all. Some things like you look at stuff that Sony and Microsoft put out, you'll hear about a game 10 years sometimes before it releases. It feels like sometimes with Nintendo, you just all of a sudden you turn on a Nintendo Direct and boom, there's Luigi's Mansion 3 thrown right at you. Like, there wasn't even rumors of this, it's crazy. And with Breath of the Wild, it was kind of like the situation where, okay, we had Skyward Sword in 2007, which had no voice acting whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was a very polarizing game. It got a lot of attention, some may say negatively, for not living up to the standards of the series. So it kind of left this hunger in the fan base's tummies that, okay, we need something to kind of take us back. Something,
Right.
take us back to what Zelda truly is. And, when I was a kid and we were playing Zelda 1, something we would do is go to the playground during school and we would compare what we were doing. Like I would go to my best friend John and I'd be like, "Hey, I found this cave and in this cave you can get this." And with Breath of the Wild it's like, "Wow, that's back." But
Yeah.
and then you go into these characters. And this is something that's always been a staple of the series is really strong characters. And there's Urbosa. She in listening to your voice, by the way, just a side note, your voice and her voice it kind of contributes to your talent. I never would have thought that someone with your voice would be that character. She's such a strong, powerful, motherly type character. The relationship she has with Zelda, It's very, mother daughter like. And when you're in there with Patricia, are you all actually doing this stuff together, or did you all record separate? How did that work?
Yeah, no, unfortunately, most, like I would say 90% of the time, particularly because we did dub Zelda because they already had it recorded in Japanese. So when we were doing our recording, we were having to match the mouth flaps of the Japanese seiyus.
Oh, wow.
So when oftentimes with recording and then particularly with dubbing, we don't get to record with the other voice actors because it's such a difficult specific thing to do the dubbing. So I had heard Patricia's voice. I knew what Zelda was going to sound like, but I didn't get to act with Patricia in the scenes, unfortunately.
But in a sense, you did get to hear her through the recordings that way that you could react off of her dialogue, so to speak.
It was just that always tends to be a matter of order who comes in first to record.
Right.
And I must have been the first person to record those scenes because I didn't actually get to hear her in the scenes. I was basically acting off of. See, we're previewed with the Japanese first, so I get to hear what both the Japanese Zelda and the Japanese Urbosa sound like, and then I'm prompted in to do my parts. And a lot of times it's kind of you're having to act in a vacuum or act within uh, the bubble of your imagination.
That is what kind of brings me to the next thing is when you're finished with all this and it's all over with, said and done, everything's recorded, and then all of a sudden March 2017 happens, and this game drops huge, like one of the biggest releases probably in the history of the company. I believe I've read recently that Breath of the Wild is actually the highest selling Zelda game of all time now.
Wow.
I believe it surpassed Twilight Princess. I'm sure somebody in the comments is going to readily be right there to correct any mistakes that I just made. But I know that it is in Japan. I do know that for sure because I remember reading that and discussing it with a couple friends of mine. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not 100% sure on worldwide though. So this game drops. How quick are you to throw in that copy in your Switch or your Wii U and hear yourself on that game?
Well, I had to wait a little bit to get a Wii. The Switch. I mean, sorry, not a Wii. I don't have a Wii, but it took me a hot minute to get the Switch. They were really hard to get your hands
Yeah.
on. So I didn't actually get to play the game until October because my mom and my brother went in, bless their hearts, and got me a Switch and a copy of the game
Oh,
as my
cool.
birthday present.
Oh,
But I did get to kind of like watch over the shoulder of some friends and watch them play through bits of it. And then I have to admit, I couldn't stand the wait. Like I absolutely went and looked up all the cutscenes on YouTube and watched the cutscenes because I didn't want to wait that long to see how the work turned out for everyone.
well, I have to say, and I know I speak for a lot of people. I interact with a lot of people in the Zelda community that Urbosa, the Four Champions, personally is my favorite. I loved her. I thought she was great. I'd always been a big fan of the Gerudos, dating back to their first appearance in Ocarina of Time.
Hmm.
And I always thought they're very very much based upon the Amazonians, and that kind of lore, so to speak. All female tribe, and with a little bit of other things kind of mixed in. Of course, Nintendo's got to have their little tweaks and stuff into everything. And here you've got this character named Urbosa. The only other really strong Gerudo character we had before she came along was, of course, in Ocarina of Time. Her name is escaping me at the moment now. She was one of the sages, Naboru,
Hmm.
and for so many
Who
years.
Vaughn Boris is named after, of course.
Exactly. Very, very good with your lore there. And now you've got this Urbosa character, and she's not just somebody who's looking for help. She's strong. She's very independent. Like I mentioned before, she's a motherly character, and that's kind of a very big difference in character types for the Gerudos. And I really thought that you really portrayed it in a very, very, very good manner. It was a like I said, I'm kind of missing the word here, but I'm going to use it again. It's a very, very strong character, and
Well, thank you.
so
Well,
go ahead.
I appreciate you saying all that. You're making me blush a little.
Well, I know we post a lot of fan art on the page, and me and a couple of the other girls that work there, they're big Urbosa fans as well, and they get some of the biggest likes on the page. She's very popular. She gets a lot of positive reactions. In fact, I don't think I've ever heard anything negative. There's been a couple negatives, maybe about maybe this person didn't like what they did with this one or that, but I've heard nothing but positive on Urbosa. So, do you ever, attend, I know that Patricia does this and a couple of the other voice actors do you ever go to, stuff like cons and stuff like that and interact with the community?
I do, yeah. I go to conventions kind of, whenever I can. And actually got to go to a gaming convention in Salt Lake City, Utah earlier this year with most of the cast of Breath of the Wild. We got a pretty large percentage. Not everybody was able to make it, but yeah, it's fantastic. One of Patricia has said this before, and I echo her sentiments. One of my favorite things about going to conventions is seeing like the generations of like families who have grown up playing Zelda and are like passing on that like love and passion to their children. So it's like, I'll see like a parent, and then I'll see their kind of like teenage age child, and then maybe a younger child like 6 or 8 or whatever, and they're all cosplaying as Zelda characters, like various Zelda characters, and they all have their own favorite iterations of the game and their favorite characters, and kind of just seeing how something like a video game can, or it's more than a video game, but how something like Zelda can bring a whole family of different ages and sometimes different interests together is really cool.
It really is. The Legend of Zelda Hub has been around for 8 years. I founded it back in September 2011. Gosh, I can't believe it's been that long. And I started off innocently enough. It was just me, you know, and it was just kind of a hobby of, okay, let's make this page on Facebook, and let's just kind of just post Zelda stuff, because I loved Zelda. It was my favorite video game, still is to this day.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I never really thought that, you know, 8 years later I would have a team. And through that team, I made some of my best friends. One of them I actually consider a member of the family pretty much. And it's like, like you said, this game, it's more than a game. It brings people together. It's almost an intangible, there isn't really a word I think that you can describe it with that would give it justice. And it's not just Zelda, other things can do this too, whether it's, Star Wars or, you know, wrestling, wrestling's got stuff that brings people together, baseball, and it's amazing how these things like this can bring people together, you know, and you mentioned cosplay.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever dressed as a Zelda character?
I have not. I haven't cosplayed in quite some time. I did it quite a bit more when I was a little younger, before I was pursuing voice acting. And I would go to conventions, just as a fan. And I did a lot more cosplaying then. But I have never cosplayed as a Zelda character, although I've seen some amazing Urbosa cosplays that have made me like want to get inspired and like go get a 6-pack and a huge red wig and give Urbosa a try myself.
She does have quite the 6-pack.
Yeah. And honestly, that's one of the things, going back to kind of what you were saying, like one of the things that makes Urbosa such a special character to me is I love Nintendo's portrayal of her both from the outside and from the inside. It's like, I love that she is like this super strong, badass, independent woman, but that she also is, it's like, she's not just like a stern stereotype warrior. It's like you said, she's got a very maternal side to her. She's got a trickster, mischievous side to her.
Yeah.
She has a sense of humor. And like, I also love that part when she's like kind of monologuing about taking down Ganon. And, she's talking about how she, Ganon took on the form of a Gerudo before, and she likes that because now she can take this fight personally. Like, she's got a little bit of like a snarky edge to her too.
Yeah.
But on the outside, and not to say that there is anything wrong with a portrayal of a woman as slender or waifish or, anything of that sort. But I love that they showed multiple types, like body types. Like Urbosa is not your typical princess, Zelda type character. She is large. She's imposing. She's in her body. She owns it. She controls it. And it's like she isn't what might be considered stereotypically universally beautiful. It's like the Gerudo have those really, exaggerated, intense, angular features. Her nose is considered larger than what is, usually considered beautiful, like in that realm.
Yeah.
And it's like all of these things come together to show what it can mean to be beautiful or a woman in a different way for me. So I love the representation there.
Yeah, that's one thing that I kind of liked about Breath of the Wild. You look at so many, especially some of the older games, and you look at character models, and everybody kind of like, they look the same, really. Not the same as the much that's like, they got different colored hair, they've got different clothing on, but when you strip them down, and look at the bare essentials of the character, essentially they kind of all look alike. They kind of run in together, or they all have the same body types. But you look at Breath of the Wild, you look at Urbosa, she's like 7 foot tall Amazonian woman, and then you go look at Mifa, she's this little tiny, dainty, adorable character, and then you look at Zelda, she's kind of just the stereotypical, dare I say, girl next door look to her, who just happens to be a princess. and then you even look at the men, even the men. You look at Link, and he's kind of the slender yet athletic type, and then you got the Gorons. They're big, like me, big, burly,
broad-chested,
look like they could drink in an entire keg in a setting. And that's what's so cool, is everything is so diverse in the game. And in so many instances in video games, movies, and television, you don't see that all the time. You're starting to see it a lot more now that eyes are being opened, and things are starting to change. And it's good to see that in games, that we can look at different characters and not have to see the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
So several months after Breath of the Wild releases, there comes the DLC, the Champions DLC, which there's more cutscenes. What was it like for you going back in to do more character work for this Urbosa and Riju?
It was lovely. I mean, there are times where I've been recording characters where it's kind of like, oof, that was tough, or this one was vocally stressful, or I just don't connect as well with the character, like on a personal level. where it's kind of like when it's done, and I'm like, well, that was a very cool experience. Happy to bring that to life, ready to move on. And, with Breath of the Wild and with Urbosa particularly, that was kind of one of those that like I didn't really want to let go. Like it felt so good to inhabit her. And it felt so fulfilling when we were working on the project. So, I mean, the DLC was kind of like, that second chance that you're like praying and hoping you get, but you're not sure it's going to happen.
Yeah. Now we've mentioned a lot about Urbosa, and then you mentioned at the top of the video that you also played another character named Riju, who was the Ascendant, as we mentioned before. Now she was a lot different, where you were this strong, independent, motherly type. Now you're playing a different character who's kind of the complete opposite. She's essentially a child thrown into a situation. Give us a little insight about what it was like to play the Riju character.
Yeah, well, they kind of did that on purpose with all of the champions. First of all, every single one of the champions voices their descendant. And they did that for a couple different reasons. I think part of it was vocally. They wanted there to be a little bit of an echo in there. But also with the character, they wanted there to be a little bit of a character similarity that would come down. So, but with Riju, like you said, she kind of had to take on this really important responsibility of leadership at an incredibly young age. So we kind of had to craft this like, well, she's been forced on some levels to kind of grow up early. So she's got to have this, this kind of like, authority and maybe a little bit of weariness. But she is still a child. So there's also got to be a little bit of that like spunkiness, a little bit of that impetuousness. Dare I say, even a tiny hint of brattiness at times. So we kind of wanted to weave like both of those aspects together and kind of show peaks of both sides. It's like sometimes you see a little bit more of the like natural, born to lead her people sort of, authority and wisdom. And then other times you see the fact that she's still a kid peeking through in her responses to Link and how she handles certain situations. So she was fun. She was a lot of fun. And we definitely recorded her after Urbosa.
That was actually my next question. Which one did you record first? And that's really interesting that they got the everybody to do the voice of both the adult, or not the adult, but the champion and the younger, protege, the descendants, with and I like that touch. That's a very Nintendo type thing. That Nintendo polish that we've heard about so many times over the years.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool too.
Now here we are. It's October 2018. It's a good year and a half since the game. You look back and when you reflect upon this, what is your biggest takeaways from working on the game?
Well, there's a part of me that still can't believe that I somehow lucked out into getting to be a part of it and voice this particular character, who is really such a gift to me. But more than anything, it's just so cool to have been kind of like welcomed into the fold of this enormous fan base in such a loving and positive and warm way. It's been just such a pleasure, and it really does feel like this enormous worldwide family. And it's also been cool. I've gotten to see how the things I love about Urbosa, how they also touch other people too. Like one of my favorite stories that I tell at conventions is that I had a young woman reach out to me on Twitter, and she basically shared with me that she was born with a very low voice for a woman, and that she was kind of teased mercilessly in school for it, and that she grew up kind of being embarrassed by it and wishing she could change it. And then she played Breath of the Wild and she heard Urbosa, who, also also has a very deep voice for a woman. And that character kind of made her start reassessing what she thought of her own voice because she liked Urbosa and Urbosa's voice so much. And so it basically kind of led to a change of mind for her that she kind of was like, no, actually, I love my voice. My voice is awesome and unique. And it actually prompted her to kind of start down the road of pursuing voice acting herself. And she recently reached out to me that she booked her first paying gig.
That is amazing.
Yeah, which to me is just such like a beautiful full circle right there.
It really is. That is such an amazing story. Um, if you could take any video game character, it doesn't even have to be Nintendo. Any character that like if the video game gods came before you and said, Elizabeth, we are letting you choose one video game character of your choosing that you can voice, who would you choose?
Oh, this is a hard one. Can I give two?
Sure.
um, there's two my two favorite games growing up, and are honestly, still some of my favorite games to this day. Were Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy. I believe in the U.S. it's 3. I always get the U.S. and the Japanese on Final Fantasy mixed up.
So do I.
But obviously they're older games. They don't have voice acting. But I kind of feel like they were such popular games that I wouldn't be surprised if like Secret of Mana, eventually they go back and they remaster these games and add in voice acting.
Yeah.
And if and when they do that, I would give my right leg to get to voice Celis in Final Fantasy 3. I don't know if you remember her. She's the blonde-headed warrior. Or in Chrono Trigger, it's oh my god, I'm totally blanking on her name because I always change the characters in video games. I change their names.
Is it the little blonde girl?
Not how do you pronounce her name? Meryl?
That's how I always say it.
Yeah, Meryl. No, it's Chrono's childhood friend, the one with the glass, Luca.
Luca, yeah, okay.
Yes.
That's a great choice.
I would love to voice Luca or Celis. Those would be my two top picks.
I've kind of considered, voice acting's always been somewhat of an interest of mine too. I live in the boonies, so not a lot of voice acting opportunities where I live. But if I ever did decide to, make the move up to LA or New York or somewhere where something like that is a lot more prevalent, and if I had that choice myself, I would want to voice Darunia from
yes.
I love Gorons. The original name for the Legend of Zelda hub was going to be called the Lazy Goron, which is probably a more accurate interpretation of who I am. But I've always loved the Gorons, and I have a voice that teachers used to tell me for years that would carry across the school.
Mm-hmm.
Just it's and that's kind of how the Gorons are. They're very. I'm not going to say loud because they don't intend to be loud. It's just they're powerful voices because they're such big creatures, and that's kind of how I am. Yeah, voice acting was always something I've always been interested in, and it's always a very pleasure to talk to any of you guys. We talked to Patricia Somerset back around this time last year. She even did a small 20-second video for the YouTube channel saying hello to the fans. One of the things I asked her, and I want to ask you this too. In fact, and let me correct myself, I'm not asking you this. I'm asking the champion Lady Urbosa herself. What would she tell to that little kid, or that little boy or that little girl who's playing Zelda for the first time? and getting ready to go on their adventure, what would she tell that kid?
Oh gosh. Um, I feel like she'd probably just say, enjoy yourself. You know, each moment is special and unique, and you will never experience another one like it. So enjoy each one. I also feel like personally, there's nothing, and I would agree too, because I feel like there's nothing quite like your first playthrough of a game that you grow to love.
Having played games for years myself, I don't know how many times I've sat and just thought, man, I wish I could have that feeling one more time of being able to play
Mm-hmm.
Breath of the Wild for the first time and discovering a new area, or Wind Waker, or Twilight Princess. There's no feeling, and then when you beat the game for the first time, that sensation you get and that feel, every gamer who has ever played, beat, or casually played, we've all had that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
We've all had that. It's what combines all gamers into this community. It's is that those feelings that these games give us. Whether you're, I've talked to people who started playing games when they were 5 or 6 years old, like I did, and I've met people who didn't play their first game until they were like 65. I met an old woman one time through the page who messaged several years ago. Um, and she told me that her daughter, who passed away due to a rare illness when she was 23, and
Hmm.
her favorite thing in the world was Zelda games, and she was packing her daughter's stuff and putting it away, and putting boxes in the basement, and she came across her daughter's video games, and her mother said she'd never touched one video game in her entire life. She'd always kind of just saw them as this waste of time. Like why do
Right.
people fool with this? So just she said she don't know what possessed her to do it. She says it must have been the spirit of her daughter, but she decided to sit down, turn the television on, and play the Wind Waker. And she said the next thing she knew, it was like 4 hours later. And she said playing those games helped her heal. They helped her heal from losing her daughter.
That's so beautiful.
And
I
it
mean,
it kind of resonates with me because back in March of 2016, I lost my mom, and then the following January, I lost my dad. 2 months later, Breath of the
oof.
Wild came out. And Breath of the Wild kind of had that same feeling with me. I was really depressed during that time. And that game, just the beauty of that game and the things that they did, just literally running around in that game doing nothing. Don't even touch the story. Don't even, just running around and just looking at like the art of the game was such a healing experience for me that I actually, and this is, like I mentioned, I'm 37. I've played them since the first one. Breath of the Wild's my favorite one because of that.
Wow. That's really awesome. Those are
Um,
both really great stories. And I think that's so beautiful too that the mom was open to, experiencing something that would help reconnect her with her daughter, even though, you know, she was gone from the physical plane.
yeah, it's an amazing fan base. I consider my lucky. I'm considered to be very lucky to be a part of it. It's almost like this honor, really. That, like I said, I started off with 12 people liking the page and posting like a different fan art every day, and having a little discussion with 2 or 3 people. Into now there's tens of thousands of people who follow us, and we're in the beginning processes of creating a website, and we've got the YouTube channel where we do things like let's plays and walkthroughs, and we do contests and giveaways. And we got so many other stuff that we want to do that's going to come in time as well, and it just continues to grow. And it's not because of anything I'm doing. I'm just a guy posting things on social media. I'm just on Twitter and Facebook. I'm a guy, but it's them. It's they make us who we are.
Mm-hmm. It's true. I mean, I'm constantly reminded, it's like I am the voice of this character. It's true. But I mean, the game, the characters, be nothing without the fans.
And not to get too far off the beaten path, one of the things that we want to learn is about you is, now that you've got this Legend of Zelda thing under your belt, have you done any more voice acting that we can look up and see?
Yeah. Let's see. What have I done since Zelda? I'm constantly working with Funimation, so there's been anime work or reprising anime roles. I think that, I did the big second season of Attack on Titan. My character Amir had a really amazing character arc in that season, which we recorded after Zelda. So that's a big one. I was actually just super recently allowed to announce my involvement in the new Just Cause game that's coming out in December, Just Cause 4.
That is awesome.
I play a character named Mira Morales. And I can't get into too much about her role in the game.
Right.
But she works pretty closely with Rico. And that was a real pleasure to work on that game. That's the first time I've ever done full performance capture for a video game, which means we're wearing the motion capture suits, we're wearing the helmet that has, the video camera pointed at our face to capture all our facial expressions, and, the mic taped onto the helmet. So, when we do these scenes, they're capturing our voice, our facial expressions, and our movements all at once. And then all that goes into the game, into the character. So that was a really unique and really cool experience. The Avalanche team is very invested in the characters and the story of that game. So that was a real treat. And, sorry, go ahead.
I said that is definitely a game that I'm definitely got to put on my list for sure. To have to check that out.
I highly recommend it.
Now that right there sounded like Urbosa.
Yeah, she creeps out every now and then.
What and outside of video games and voice acting, tell us a little bit more about what you've done.
Let's see. Some other larger things that I'm known for is the Persona series. I was in Persona 5 as Sai Nijima. Not sure how familiar you are with that game, Andrew, but she's basically the protagonist are arrested, and a lot of the story of the game is told through flashbacks as you kind of explain why you're there and answer questions. And Sai, my character, is the public prosecutor that is interrogating you most of the game. And that was a really very cool, intensely story-based game. That was a lot of fun to delve into. I'm also Midnight in the anime My Hero Academia, which is incredibly big right now. Such an incredible show. I don't know if you like anime at all, but I highly, highly recommend it if you do.
I have watched a few episodes. A very good series.
Yeah, it really grows some legs and has a big heart as it progresses through the seasons. And what else? What are some of my other big ones? I'm in Ruby, the Rooster Teeth show Ruby. I play Winter Schnee, who is the elder sister of Weiss Schnee. And I do a bunch of other shows with Rooster Teeth, like Nomad of Nowhere and Camp.
Rooster Teeth, they've really been a staple for quite a while.
Yeah, they are growing in leaps and bounds. It is really impressive to watch. Very happy for them with this the new show they've got under their belt. I'm not sure when it's coming out, but Genlock is one of their next big animated shows that'll be coming out, and it has like Michael B. Jordan is playing the main character, and David Tennant is one of the supporting characters. I mean, they've got like an incredible cast
That's amazing.
thus far for that show. Yeah. And yeah, those are some of the big ones. I mean, I could sit here and list anime all day.
Oh, I know that a lot of
Attack on Titan.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just saying Attack on Titan and My Hero Academia are two of the bigger ones that people tend to recognize my voice from.
Yeah, I know that I got a couple of the team members are really big Attack on Titan fans. My friend Matt, you mentioned Persona a moment ago. My friend Matt, he is a huge Persona fan, so he's definitely going to like that. he will definitely be he'll be fanboying over that, I'm sure. Elizabeth, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule. I hope the weather's not too hot out there in LA.
Well, I'm actually in Austin right now, and it's mid 80s, so still pretty warm for October, but it's pleasant.
That's about what we've got over here in West Virginia. I don't know if you've ever been over here, but it's very abnormally warm for this time of year. Thank you so much for your time. This has been an absolute honor for me to be able to speak to you and discuss, this wonderful characters that you have breathed life into, and discussing the amazing fan base we have. And you are a wonderfully talented, beautiful woman, and we thank you on behalf of my team. I wish we could have all done this together. That would have been really awkward for a Skype call, though. On behalf of all of them, I want to thank you on behalf of everybody in the Legend of Zelda Hub fan base and the Legend of Zelda fan base itself. We thank you for your time. Any closing moments or anything you want to plug, feel free to jump right in there.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It was a real pleasure, and I'm so glad that we were able to make it work. And yeah, I guess I would just say I really do really enjoy interacting with fans and seeing fan art and hearing stories about people's experiences playing the game. So please feel free to reach out to me or connect with me on social media. I try to be very active and respond to everybody, even if it takes me a hot minute. I'm most active on Twitter, where you can find me. My handle is about Elizabeth M. And then also Instagram. And on there, I guess I must have been the first Elizabeth Maxwell to join, because my Instagram handle is just at Elizabeth Maxwell.
All right, that's some good luck right there. And if you want to, after we're done recording, if you want to send me links to both of those, I will include both links to those in the description below the video. That way.
Oh, fantastic! I will do so.
Awesome. All right, everybody. This has been the Legend of Zelda Hub podcast. I am Andrew Dawson. This has been Elizabeth Maxwell with me. Everybody, enjoy your Zelda, enjoy your games, enjoy your fun. And once again, thank you, Elizabeth, for joining us.
It was my pleasure. Stay furious, everyone.